what I probably screwed up, but hold on one second. Excuse me.
Off button.
Choked on some water. Let me do that.
You just screwed up that scene.
Oh,
Retake in 3, 2,
2, 1. Good afternoon, sports fans. Welcome back to the BallNine Roundhouse. We have a great panel today. We're going to talk a little bit about the year that was 2021. So let's go around and introduce everybody. We've got senior contributor to Forbes, Baseball Writer Association member, great guitar player, Bizball. You might know him from writing everything from sports finance to motorsports. Maury Brown is here. How you doing, Maury? Welcome back.
I'm doing great, man. It's always great to be on. I love this panel. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Now, you may know him from years in the MLB broadcast booth, or you may know him as the founder of Big Fly Gear, or now you may know him as the president and GM of the Frisco Rough Riders. Victor Rojas is back. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right. How you guys doing? All right?
Good, man. Good. Trying to stay warm, you know.
Yeah, it's warm here in Florida. I'm trying to stay chilly.
Lucky. Maury and I are dressed for, the tundra over here. But and last but not least, we have my battery mate from the 1986 Recreation Belleville Champion Indians. Rocco Constantino is here, our ombudsman. What's going on, man?
How's it going? Good to be back. Ready to talk some baseball. Let's wrap up 2021.
Please, let's wrap up 2021.
The lead off.
Very curious about you guys' favorite storylines of the season. There was a lot of good stuff as well as some negative, as we all know. But your favorite thing this year that happened? I'm going to start with Maury. What was your favorite storyline of 2021?
I think in a number of ways, I look at the Rays. I think that they continue to be a juggernaut, doing it with a smaller payroll, and I think that that's an example. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was entertaining. As far as the storyline, to look at the Padres, and early in the season, the Dodgers Padres games early on reminded me of playoff baseball. And we all know the Padres, of course, slipped and slid all the way down, at the end of the season and didn't make the playoffs. But that early period was a great one. And then we had two teams that I just did not expect to do well in the Giants and the Red Sox. So again, I think it's important. The thing that here we are wrapping up the year, and we're going to talk about next year and what's going on at some point. I think it's important to note that baseball is not played on paper, and that it's important to look how it is. I think the other piece that's super important is that we got a whole season in. I don't know if we really can remember what was going on in February, March, and leading up to the season, that the players, wanted a full season, that the commissioner was concerned about COVID and really pushing back, and we got a full season in. And I think that that's really important. It's important to look at it now with what the NFL, NBA, and NHL are going through and what could potentially hit the league further down the line. But that in and of itself, the fact that we were able to see a lot of baseball, I thought that was one of the better storylines, just the fact that we got a full season.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that, because I was not sure what was going to happen. I don't think anybody was sure. But, like we said, I mean, the Rays, the Giants and the Red Sox, like you mentioned, three very different style managers, but all very good managers in their own right. Now we also saw, two old guys managing their way into the World Series, and Snicker and Dusty Baker. Do you guys think that could be something that we see a little more of? Some of these guys, Clint Hurdle's getting hired. Victor, I'm just curious about your take on the managers, and then I want to get your favorite story.
Yeah, I don't know that I would say that Gabe Kapler maybe redeemed himself a little bit this year. How much of that was the talent on the roster that a lot of people overlooked because of the Dodgers and the Padres in the same division. But Gabe wasn't the he wasn't the quintessential manager of the year candidate. Well, while guiding the Philadelphia Phillies. So that being said, did have a heck of a season. To Maury's point about the Dodgers and the Padres, it really felt like Dodgers Giants of years past when it was the Lasorda Dodgers and almost the hatred between the two teams. I kind of got that same sense early on between the Dodgers and the Padres as well. But as far as the older managers, yeah, I think, I don't know that teams are looking at Dusty and at Snit and sitting there go, well, maybe experience does matter or whatever. I think those guys have always been around. I think it's a cyclical business and it's a copycat industry, and everything is from a front office perspective to on the field. And so I think when you start seeing some success and guys that are older and players of today's world really flourishing under the leadership of veteran baseball people, I think owners take notice of that, and I think general managers do as well. And I think that's why Buck is leading the Mets. Truth be told, and there's some familiarity there because Billy Epler interviewed Buck as part of the Angels organization prior to Joe Madden getting that job. But I think there's something to be said about that. The interesting thing that I see from a trend, truth be told, and probably more so, and I'm more in tune with it now because I'm in the minor leagues, and then my son's a high school baseball player, so I'm kind of in tune with that travel ball college thing, is the amount of former major league players going and becoming head coaches or assistant coaches at the collegiate level. It's unbelievable. From Kirk Saarloos leading TCU to Cheito Cruz leading Rice, Cliff Pennington signing on to be an assistant at Dallas Baptist University, and all pretty good. Matt Holliday's an assistant at Oklahoma State. So it's interesting to see these guys, instead of going the professional route, going to the amateur level, which I think is great. I think it's terrific, because if that's the precursor or the next step to professional baseball, why not listen to guys and learn from guys that have done it at the highest level? So I think that's probably one of the things that kind of stands out for me from an amateur perspective. From the big league perspective, I think, obviously Shohei was just ridiculous is what he was capable of doing. To Maury's point, I think having a full season was great. I think having minor league baseball back was great, even though it was a shortened season. And so I think, going forward, hopefully the CBA thing gets sorted out. There's not missed time at the major league level. We're not scheduled to miss any time. We're supposed to launch on April the 8th in Frisco, and they've told us all full steam ahead as far as minor league baseball, regardless of what's going on with the CBA. So that's kind of what, that's kind of how I wrap up my 21, and, fingers crossed for 22.
Absolutely. Now, really quick, I did want to ask you about Shohei Ohtani. I mean, you covered him when he came over, and, now he actually had a full season and put it together, MVP season, which I think he had locked up probably in June or July. Do you think that's just health on his part, that he actually stayed healthy and was able to put up a season that he was capable of doing, or did he kind of find something and put it together and push it to the next level?
I think it's a combination of things. I think health obviously is it stands out. His rookie campaign was cut short with the elbow issue. Yeah. And then obviously the Tommy John. I think what stands out to me the most for Shohei is he was a completely lost offensive player in 2020, shortened season and all. And it could have been any number of things. The shortened season, coming back from Tommy John surgery, trying to figure it all out, the ramp up in spring training to the shutdown to ramping back up. But he was horrific as an offensive player in 2020, and then flipped the script to 21, and he comes out and just is capable of doing what he's doing, or what he did, was simply amazing, to be perfectly honest with you. I think he's a supreme athlete, understands what his body needs to prepare to do both things simultaneously, back-to-back days. And I think that's the other thing. They've unleashed the Kraken, if you will, of allowing him to just go. And not when he got to the big leagues with Mike Scioscia, remember, he wasn't going to hit the day before or the day after he pitched. It was kind of like these kid gloves, trying to figure out what you had. And now, and to his credit, he wanted to just go ahead and go. If he felt good, he wanted to go. And as we know with professional athletes, if they know their own bodies, they know their own capabilities, and if he's telling you he's good to go on an everyday basis, you should at least try to maximize as much as possible, because it's a short shelf life. I mean, how he's capable, or if he's capable of sustaining this level, doing both things for an extended period of time, will be amazing. If he could do this 5-6 years in a row, I think that onto itself, and I don't want to get hyperbolic here, but it's almost Hall of Fame worthy. And it's like when you're doing both things, if you're able to sustain at a high level, whether he wins MVPs or not, but be able to do, win 10 to 12 games, hit 25 bombs, 30 bombs, and hit, 270, 280. I think that's just insane. Like I said, he never ceases to amaze.
I couldn't agree with you more. Now, Rocco, you're a resident Mets fan, and your Mets had a lot to talk about, especially after the season ended.
All year long.
You kidding me? Well, all year long. There's always something. I mean,
all year
but it's not always good, So I mean, you had the little dust up in the clubhouse with McNeil and Lindor, and they blamed a raccoon.
Go back to the general manager getting fired.
Oh, two of them.
Wasn't it two of them?
I mean, two of them. Beltran,
one before the season, one toward the end of the season.
Oh my goodness!
Sorry, Rocco.
No, that's all right.
But so I know you've dwelled on that enough, so we're not going to hammer you on that, Rocco. But I mean, there has been a lot to talk about since the season has ended. I'm going to assume, as a Mets fan, that is your favorite part of the 21 season, was Steve Cohen just opening up the coffers and saying, "Have at it, Billy Epler," and and getting everybody. But I'm curious to know what your favorite part of the 21 season is.
Yeah, with the Mets stuff. I mean, I think Cohen, in his first year, sat there and observed and saw what happened, and it was, embarrassment after embarrassment with some of the things that you mentioned. The thumbs down stuff, let's not forget about that. And I think he's had enough. I think it's, they didn't go out and name a GM yet. Alderson's still wielding a lot of power there. You got Buck, and now he's spending the money. You saw some players that they kind of didn't have an interest in bringing back that have been there and been successful there. It seems like they're really trying to change that culture. It's been, 60 years of trying to change the culture. Let's see if it sticks this time. But I'm definitely happy with the path that they're on now. As for, 2021 and some of my favorite things, Victor and Maury mentioned some awesome stuff. I mean, especially, like you said, the fact that baseball even played a full season and fans were back, and the Blue Jays got back in Toronto, the minor leagues were back in play, starting to get some sense of normalcy there. One thing I always liked was the no-hitters, the year of the no-hitter. It was something that was pretty fun to follow along. How much of that had to do with spider tack and stuff, but you had 9 no-hitters this year, setting a major league record. And to me, and we watched one of them together, Tyler Gilbert's.
We did. With Tino Martinez,
sitting there with that anticipation and watching, whether somebody's going to finish that no-hitter or not. I mean, that's awesome theater. So it was just really cool to watch that so much. And one of the things I thought was the coolest about that was that, aside from Rondon, all the other guys who threw no-hitters, their average fastball velocity was less than 95 miles an hour. These are guys throwing 88, Wade Miley 88, Kluber 89, Gilbert 89, Musgrove, and they're working the count. I mean, it's bringing that artistry back to pitching, and the way people swing these days. That's a good recipe for being successful. I think you don't have to go out there and just overpower and blow the ball by somebody like Sandy Koufax on his birthday today. We're recording, but you can sit there and throw 88, 89 miles an hour on average and throw a major league no-hitter. So that was cool. So much cool stuff. Just a great year, a lot of ups and downs, but I always try to look at the positives.
Absolutely. And it's funny. Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, about that though, you mentioned the no-hitters, and I begin to wonder whether we're at this point where we're just numb to it. And it seems to happen so often now. And it used to be such a big deal. And so I begin to wonder about, we had this mid-season. One of the bad things about it was that Manfred implemented the the change to enforcing sticky stuff mid-season. I would have liked to have seen it at the beginning of the year, give the off season for the pitchers to adjust. Mm-hmm. And there's talk about, rolling out a pre-tacked ball in 22. And you mentioned all the, velocity and whatnot, but the thing that really is that I'm seeing that I think is absolutely incredible is the amount of movement with velocity that I don't ever recall. And you're looking at stuff when you start to see, you're starting to see change-ups in the low 90s. And it's just crazy. And sliders that are approaching 100. And it's making it very difficult for batters to do their thing. And this is the good thing, bad thing. It's exciting from a pitcher's perspective to watch it. I wonder about if it's kind of gotten a little bit numbing. But I got a great deal of concern heading into this season about the number of strikeouts and numbers of ball in play and just the pace of the game itself. And I know we're supposed to be looking at the good thing, but that's something that I'd like to see more of. I don't know if Manfred's going to wait a year and then unilaterally implement, or whether they'll work it out with the players, but something has to be done about pace. When we're seeing pitchers go, in the postseason, if your pitcher went into the fourth inning, it was like, my God, I couldn't, you're like, you're just depleting the bullpen, about 8 innings in, your bullpen was almost depleted. If it went to extras, it just got ridiculous. So I really hope the league gets that under control in some way, shape, or form with the players, hopefully. I mean, that's something for the CBA, but hopefully they negotiate it with the players. And instead of going another year like this, Manfred notifying the players that he's going to implement, and then he has to wait a year to do it unilaterally in 2023.
Wow. Chris, I'm going to jump in real quick. I think that on the heels of what Maury just said, I think a lot of it really has to do with the development of pitchers in today's game, and whether it starts at the amateur level or otherwise, this whole max effort and max effort on every single pitch. And what happens is you end up throwing a lot of pitches per at bat and per plate appearance. And that's why, to me, that's where I think you get into longer games, longer at bats, longer games, foul balls, so on and so forth. Strikeout opportunities obviously become a little bit more plentiful in those situations as well. To Rocco's point, as far as the velocity of the no-hitters this year, to me, it's all about pitchability. If you can command the strike zone with all 4 of your pitches and get hitters out as quickly as possible, you're destined to work deeper into games. You're destined to work faster. Games or pace of games will go a lot quicker, and so on and so forth. So, I don't know what the commissioner can do outside of a pitch clock, and I think a pitch clock helps. There's no doubt about it. I think a pitch clock and unleashing the umpires to call the rule book as it is, meaning telling pitchers to pitch, telling batters to step in the batter's box, and if not, just start calling pitches like they used to do. If a pitcher is not ready to start ready to throw a pitch, start calling ball 1. And I guarantee you'll get pitchers that get on the rubber and start throwing the ball. Same thing goes for the batter. Call strike 1 on the bat if he's not ready to jump in the batter's box, and I'll guarantee you those batters will start jumping in the batter's box a lot quicker. I think that the combination of those two will help move the game along from a commissioner's perspective, what he can implement. But I think it goes back to the development of these pitchers. And, until we get away from player development and agents telling their guys, hey, just empty the tank from pitch number 1, and it doesn't matter if you go 5 innings or otherwise. I'm talking strictly from a starting pitcher's perspective. It doesn't matter. If you go 75 pitches max effort, your job is done. I think that mentality, those guys have to get out of that mentality and get back into the fold of pitchability. You can get to 100 pitches, work 7 innings and 100, 110 pitches, and be effective and move the game along. But until we get to that point, I just don't. I think anything that you do from either a CBA or a commissioner just imposing new rules, I think it's artificial. But I think you can control the pitching side of things a lot better.
No,
Hope that makes sense.
No, it does. And I actually wanted to ask you. You brought up new rules. Now, the commissioner is trying a lot of things in the minor leagues. I believe in AA, where Frisco is. You tried, but what was the first half of the season was infielders had to be on the dirt, or was it just no
Yeah.
shifting? Now, did you see any significant boost in offense or pace of play or anything like that? No.
To me, it was nominal. I don't have a problem with the shift, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, to negate something in hopes of gaining more offense. I mean, the game's been played that way for forever. There are shifts being implemented, and maybe not to the extreme that we see in today's game, but whether you have a shortstop shading toward the middle of the infield, I mean, that's a shift. That's considered a shift. That stuff's been going on, forever in the game. So I didn't see that. The different leagues, different levels had different rules attached to them. The pickoff, I think the pickoff rule or the limit on pickoffs or step offs, I think that's going away. I don't know how much of an impact the slightly larger base has on. I think the effect of that was supposed to be increase the opportunity of stolen bases. Well, no, the increase of stolen bases happens if you just tell people it's okay to steal a base if you have the capability of stealing a base, not being worried about giving away one of the 27 outs. That has been the mantra over the last, 5 to 10 years. Don't give away outs. Sacrifice bunting is bad. Stealing bases is bad. My retort to that is always, everyone talks about strikeout. It's all or nothing. It's good that you try for the home run. Yeah, it's really good. At 600 plate appearances in the hopes that you hit a home run, once every how many at bats? 11, 12 at bats. And so how many outs are you giving away by trying to hit the home run that you might get 20 to 25 to 30 of them in your 600 at bats? I don't see the rhyme or reason behind it, but that to me, if it's quickening the game or trying to change the game from an offense perspective, back to the whole Frisco AA and the shift thing, I don't see the correlation. I'm sure there are some that probably feel that there was a nominal increase in offense. The games I saw that we had a pretty good offensive team, pretty good team in general. There was offense regardless of the shift. And so, and that may have been just a carryover of no minor league season in 2020. Guys having not played since September of 2019 and the offense being ahead of the pitching side of things.
Yeah. I mean, I see where you're coming from there. Now, let's stick with the pace of play really quickly. Now, Rocco, I just want to get your thoughts on it. And I also wanted to mention, I think when Maury had mentioned the pre-tacked balls, is it the KBO that uses those? Is it Korea where they already use that? I think it might be the KBO that use a pre-tacked.
Oh, it's Japan.
Ball like that. Is it Japan?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thought. So now, Rocco, you and I were throwing baseballs around with some spider tack, and how sticky that stuff is, and it's stuck to your hand. So, but I mean, I am curious to know, like, what you think about starting pitching. I know you've written, like how starting pitching has been devalued, how it's not exactly looked upon as important, nearly as important as it once was. So just your thought on that real quick.
Yeah. I mean, I also wonder if there's, a financial aspect of that. You're $30 million Max Scherzer type of guy that's going to go out and throw 200 innings and 7 to 9 innings in a game. That's the highest paid guy. Middle relievers who come in and throw 1 inning, 1 to 2 innings here and there aren't making as much money as that guy. So those big time workhorse starters, as they get phased out, that average salary of starting pitching is going to come down too. I don't know if that has a factor into it, if that's a conscious thing, or just a happy accident for the owners that it's working out that way. But that's something to think about as well. I miss it. It's a heavyweight fight. You look back at the 60s and 70s, Marichal going against Koufax, Seaver going against, Steve Carlton, Jim Palmer going against Catfish Hunter. Those are guys that you knew were going to be in there 7 to 9 innings, go head to head. Nobody's going to back down. It's going to be compelling baseball to watch for 3 hours or 2.5 hours at those times. So, that's something that's really missing, I think. You see it when it comes up every so often. You'll get Scherzer against Walker Buehler or something like that, or, but it's not something that's happening every day. And I think that's something that is really missing out on the entertainment value of baseball.
Hey, Rocco, it's interesting that you bring up the whole financial aspect from starting pitching. I brought this up. Heck, I may have even brought it up on the air 3-4 years ago when the whole opener thing started and the Tampa Bay Rays were doing it. And I spoke of it from the standpoint of if I were an agent of one of these starting pitchers, I'd be pretty pissed because I'm losing out those opportunities. One starts, obviously when you go to arbitration, all these things factor into and impacting what your potential salary could be. So I don't know why more people haven't talked about that. And I think the opener thing has been overplayed. And I think it's kind of seen its shelf life. I think teams you still get teams that'll end up doing it, but I think that mentality is there. Like if I put on a general manager's hat, I could see, okay, if I'm talking Tampa Bay Rays, always talking about budget, they're budget conscious because of the market that they're in and so on and so forth. Well, there's one way of artificially really depressing the financial market on starting pitching, and that is by what? Well, let's move the starting pitcher. He's not he has trouble second, third time through the order, so let's have an opener for him. And therefore, by doing things like that and manipulating it, you have the opportunity of down the road, whether it's arbitration or otherwise, of signing these guys long term to say, well, wait a second, I can't compare you to a normal starting pitcher, a Max Scherzer or whomever, because your numbers don't line up in the same columns as those guys. Therefore, I need to pay you at a different rate. And it basically opened up a different lane, if you will, from a salary structure, which is I would imagine would be much lower than those, guys that are taking the baseball every fifth day.
Yeah. Hey, to that, Victor.
Maury, I would really like to get your thoughts on this, just because this is right in your wheelhouse. So.
Yeah. So every year, the Associated Press releases the final and luxury tax payrolls, and I go through them, and I've been, looking at them for over a decade. This past year, total finals payrolls were the lowest they've been since 2015. So there's been a decrease along the way. And it's not, so Victor, you hit two things early on, right? So you talk about max velocity and basically emptying the tank, and that leads itself into using relievers. So there's that whole design by having pitchers doing that. But we've also seen a decline at the age and the career length of just everyday players. The average career now is 3.5 seasons. So all of that plays into the bottom line. Of course, all of this does. So when you put it together, I mean, Rocco, you said a happy accident. I begin to wonder whether it's, whether it's by design or not. Clearly the players are watching this very closely. I mean, all of this stuff that's going on that I know, Victor, I know you can't talk about it, so I will. The situation with trying to get players into salary arbitration earlier, whether the players will be able to get all service level 2 guys in, I don't know. But I can guarantee you they're gonna try and get a larger chunk of those guys in. If the league has said that, look, it's a free market system. I've had people at the league tell me straight up, hey, the players wanted a free market system. Welcome to the free market system. We saw stuff before they did. We think that we get more value up front now. Our analytics are better with our prospects. Our development is better. We're getting more mileage out of younger guys than doing potential albatross contracts with guys that are veterans. So we're going to go ahead and put our eggs in that basket. Okay, great. If the game is still great, I don't think us as fans should really care. But if you're, of course, the Players Association, you're worried about it. I mean, there's no excuse. Revenues continue to go up. The next season, and we're going to have another season here pretty quick. I don't care whether we're in a lockout or not. All the national television money goes up about 22%. So when you throw those things together, I don't care if we're in a pandemic and things are different or whatever, and maybe it's less on the gate and more in media money. Revenues have outpaced player salaries. So I think the players have a pretty good argument to get that. Whether you artificially inflate it, that's the question. Are we going to artificially inflate it in some way or shape or form? I hope not. I mean, in my dream of dreams, we have the luxury tax in reverse. We would penalize clubs for going below a threshold. We wouldn't have a hard floor. If they did it in consecutive years, there would be a higher rate of penalty. And if they went well below, they would get dinged even more. It would be exactly like the system that we have at the top. But I mean,
Interesting.
I mean, it's a concern. It's a real concern if you're the players. And, and once again, there are some clubs that are absolutely living off welfare. I hate to be on them, but the Pirates have no excuse for hanging around the bottom as long as they have when they have got a ton of money flowing in.
No, that's a good. So you're more in favor of a soft floor, I guess, right? I mean,
I like a soft floor. I don't think we're going to get it.
I believe I believe MLB needs a floor in some capacity, though, because just like you said, I mean, there's no reason for the Pirates to just sit there and just take the money from the luxury tax and not put it back into payroll. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff tied together. There's more value than placed on younger players. Yeah. So Victor's seeing that in the development cycle. He's seeing it at the collegiate level, so he knows that. So if you're seeing that and you're seeing more weight being placed on younger players, then of course the Players Association is going to try and see that happen. But you have to do something about the draft pick process. And it's just wacky. You got teams running to the bottom to procure draft picks. And because those draft picks are more, important now, I begin to wonder whether we, should we be allowed to have clubs trade draft picks? I don't see anything wrong with that. Every other league has largely embraced this. So it'll be whether they do a pool, whether they do a system similar to what you see in the NHL or something closer to the NBA on how the draft selection goes, or how the rankings are for that. But you have to do something about these teams that are just hanging around the bottom. And then the teams that are hanging around the bottom have high draft picks and then are unloading these guys before they're able to tap out and top out.
What the funny thing is about what you just pointed out too, as far as the money being spent on the development of the draft picks, is that you still get the service time manipulation early on in these players' careers, and which I never understood, to be perfectly honest with you, because at the end of the day, whether the term of a player is being shortened and the like, the idea that you're trying to keep a player for an extra year, if that guy now. If it's a team that is capable of contending that year, why wouldn't you start? If that player can help you from day one, as opposed to day 15 or 17 or 18, whatever the number turns out to be in the month of April, why not just start his clock? Because you know what I'm saying? I just never understood why you need to wait to buy the back end, that sixth year, the seventh year, however the calculation works. If they're capable of doing that now and helping you right now, why they still try to manipulate the service time clock? When obviously Maury just touched on a couple of the different topics of how much better player development is, how much better the analytics are as far as the amateur players getting into professional baseball, the money situation of it. But it's just funny to me that they all these things, and they still manipulate. Chris Bryant type of player to try to get something on the back end. And if it's a team that's, trudging at the bottom of the pack, it's probably a guy that'll never see the end of that fifth, sixth, seventh year, if you will, with that original ball club, because if there is some value or he skyrockets to a point where you can't afford him any longer or within your structure, you're going to flip him anyway.
Yeah, I mean, now this is something that I didn't know we were going to get into this, but is the draft going to be shorter again this coming year? I mean, I know they cut a bunch of rounds off the back end of the draft. It is. Now, how do you stock a minor league system if you have like 10 rounds or 15 rounds of a draft?
You have fewer teams in minor leagues now.
Yeah.
That was part of the reorganization of minor league baseball under Major League Baseball's umbrella, and so. You basically have 4 teams, plus whatever. If you can't have a camp in your spring training home team as well. But those days of the Yankees having 7 teams, 3 low A ball teams where you've got 1,500 players in your city, those days are long gone. And so I think Maury, correct me if I'm wrong, the draft still will have to be negotiated as part of the CBA, but everything I understand is that they like that 20 round number. They think that's
Yeah.
from an ownership perspective, that's a good number for them.
Well, there's a give and take with it, right? Are the players happy about how things went? Well, I don't know how many, of course the union has their constituency and the minor league players largely aren't. I mean, they'll say that they of course support them. But I mean, the big thing about it is that if you look, and you know this, Victor, like how many guys like we're filling, largely an entertainment thing. And the clubs went, wait a second, we're scouting better, we're developing better. Why do we have all these players? They're coming up and playing one season. If you had 2,000 players in a draft, there's just no places for them. So, it
was a cycle. You had to release guys to sign the new guys. Yeah.
Every year you're drafting all the guys. So, it did get to the point where it was like, what are we doing here? Are we developing players? Are we creating an entertainment form for minor league clubs and the owners, of course, to make money on it? Now, look, there's an antitrust lawsuit going on right now by 3 or 4 clubs that got, burned and didn't make the cut. So I don't know what they do about it. But in terms of the minor leagues, I will say this. The league, without really revealing any sources, both on the minor league and major league side, there is talk about the costs that are going on right now. So we're going to supply more housing. Thank goodness for that. And we've seen, pay increase in some areas, maybe not enough for everybody that would like it, but we've seen an increase of it. When you start talking about the increased costs that are going to go on, and then what's going on in terms of also facility upgrades at the minor league level, there's been talk that in 2030, they won't commit to whether there might be another level of contraction. Now, whether that's about the fact, that we're just not going to talk hypotheticals that far out or not, but I'm hearing it from both minor league owners and I'm hearing it at the major league level that there's concerns about cost control at the minor league level. So the number of players, again, I think it'll be important to watch how many players are actually being developed and running into the major leagues, right? How many players, how much turn is going on at the major league roster level and being pulled up at the minor league level, and how many of them are just like, cups of coffee in the minors. Basically, they played a year of single A ball, short season, and then now they're gone. And so again, the number of players, the number of rounds, I think are about right. Anything more than that, I think you're just flooding, more players than is needed at this point.
And just to provide some context, that 2030 year is, we minor league teams signed 10-year PDL licenses. So that's where you get to 2030.
Yep. Yeah. And that would make sense, right? I mean, again, when I talk to them, they're like, well, we're not going to talk about past 2030 because that's the agreement. But there is, once again, I think some concerns, some cost concerns around things. Some of it is, and Victor, you guys are in a healthy position, but I'm looking at it, guys, I'm sorry, I'm kind of running off on the minor league stuff, but the cost, people, I think, or club owners were like, oh, we got, thank goodness. I don't think they really took into account how much money they were going to have to pour into their facilities. And I'm seeing this all across the minors right now. It's like, it's not good enough just to have made the cut. Major League Baseball wants to see quality level facilities that are maybe in line or maybe better than some major league clubs. And that's going to cost additional resources. So clubs are on there. You could have clubs on the bubble even between now and 2030.
Interesting. Rock, I just want to get your take on this before we go around and start getting some wrapping things up with some final thoughts here.
Well, it's about the minor league stuff. Or
yeah.
I mean, what Maury and Victor said, I mean, they're the two experts on it. I don't think I can add anything above what they said, but it makes perfect sense that, that draft stays 20 rounds. I mean, it does kind of stink that you have that diamond in the rough who gets drafted beyond that. That makes a great story, like Piazza, Mattingly, stuff like that. But that seems like an appropriate number with the reduction in minor league teams as well.
All right. Well, we are at that point where we're going to go around and get a final thought from each of you guys, because we don't want to keep you here all night. But what do you see going forward? We talked about the year that was. What about the year that will be? which is 2022. Maury, I'll start with you.
Well, we're in a lockout, guys.
Yeah.
So let's just start there, right? I think there's a possibility that some spring training games could potentially be lost. It's quite possible that, and this is really, I think that in the players, where the players are at, and it's like, how hardline do they want to stick to certain things? I don't think that they're able to claw back from how they are now in one agreement. I just don't think you can eat the elephant all in one bite. So the question will be, what are they going to want to get in now and then potentially look at for the next CBA? I think that, once again, the players, of course, don't get paid for spring training. So the pressure then becomes on the owners to try and get something done. So I'm really hopeful that in the midst of all of this stuff, right, and we've been talking about the core economics, the draft system, tanking, the situation with whether we're going to get younger players into the salary arbitration and free agency earlier, all those have an economic component. But I'm really, really hope that the game itself is looked at, and we got to get something figured out with it, whether it's artificial, as Victor mentioned, or not. Right now, depending, how the game is being played is not nearly as enjoyable as it used to be. The older guys that Rocco mentioned earlier and how those were really is, I think, an artifact of how much harder and how much durability you have now based upon velocity, and velocity with movement, I think, is a core thing. So again, if you got a guy that's just going to go ahead and whip that stuff out every, as hard as he can, then that will be the way that the game is managed, and that's the way that the game will go. And I don't know if that's good. Hey man, if we can get through 6 innings before we get into, 4-minute commercial breaks and calls to the bullpen, okay, that's better than 4. So
Yeah.
That all said, I would see a CBA of no more than 5 years. There's no way that they're doing some long-term deal. And then I think that the thing that is hanging out there that is going to be between now and the end of this coming year, and in the years to follow, will be the change in the media landscape. I mentioned that national TV rights are going to go up about 22%, but streaming and the idea of traditional cable is changing a lot. And you're watching the NFL go over to Amazon next year, for their Thursday night package. So how is that going to look? Remember, ESPN had all the midweek games, right? That goes away in 2022, and they still haven't reached a deal on that. So it'll be interesting to see who picks that up. They'll absolutely get somebody to do it,
Mm-hmm.
So it's something to watch.
I agree. Now, Rocco, let me get a final thought from you.
I'm just looking forward to a couple of things in 2022. Hopefully they get it straightened out and playing. But Miguel Cabrera is going to be, he's only 13 more hits away from 3,000. That's something that's going to be really cool to see. I mean, looking at it right now, there's nobody else even with 2,000 career hits. So it's going to be a long time before we see somebody with 3,000 again. So we hope to see that. And, Albert Pujols, he's still 21 homers away from 700. Be tough for him to get it in 1 year. So I don't know what's going to happen with Pujols, but also off the field, really looking forward to the Hall of Fame induction ceremony in the summer with Gil Hodges and Buck O'Neill and, all those guys, Tony Oliva, Jim Cott, all those great guys going in. I think that's going to be awesome to watch. I always love the Hall of Fame induction and stuff. And I just, it's fantastic to see all those guys going in. And I think that good feeling is going to roll over, and you will start seeing, hopefully, guys like Thurman Munson and Louis Tiant, and others along those lines that maybe, get in now with that kind of momentum. Guys that have been waiting a long time in the vein of those Oliva, Cott, and people like that.
Awesome. And Victor, it is your turn for a final thought.
I think I'm a little bit more optimistic on the CBA than maybe Maury is. And I'm probably speaking from my heart more than anything else. I think there's just so much to lose across the board, especially after kind of the shortened season at the major league level, the lost season at the minor league level in 2020. I know there's a lot of different variables at play, but I think it'll be fine and we'll get going. I could also say, I hope the lockout goes into May and all you get is minor league baseball, because then that's selfishly, I'm like, all right, we own the Dallas market, come to Frisco, baby. But I think that would be damaging to the game overall, and I don't think it'd be good. So that's why I think I'm more optimistic about it. I like the idea of, Rocco mentioned Albert Pujols, and I'm so pulling for him to try to get to 700. The fact that he went down to the Dominican tells you that he's determined to do it. I'm hopeful. I think the storybook is that the DH is universal in both leagues as part of the CBA. He signs with St. Louis. He's able to go there, DH, play some first base periodically. And I think you just have a tremendous storyline of this march to 700. That's why I'm really chapped about the shortened season of 20, because, Albert finished on a pretty decent little run in 19. And I remember talking to Gooby, Mark Gooby was my partner at the time, thinking, well, he's got 2 years left on his contract, man. If, he doesn't need to really go off. He just needs to be steady for those 2 years. And we might be talking about having some fun on the chase to 700. And, unfortunately that didn't happen with the 60 game schedule. So that's kind of what I'm pulling for on that end. And I just want to see the growth of baseball, to continue to manifest itself, especially at the minor league level. The minor league game is so different. It's so not business related. It is from my perspective, but from a fan perspective, being able, as the season progressed last year, being able to see fans interact with players and signing autographs and taking pictures and so on and so forth, as things kind of calmed down from the pandemic, we got into late summer before the Delta variant. That was so cool to see. It really was. And, being able to see fans on the field for our July 4th fireworks for the first time all year, it's just, and seeing kids doing snow angels in the grass and dads playing catch with their son. That's what it's all about. You know what I mean? I think at its core, I wish we can get back to that and selling that, the Americana part of baseball. And, Maury, I don't know about you, man, but I kind of miss Tim Brosnan a little bit, because he was kind of that, that's how his mind worked, at least from my recollection of Tim, from a marketing perspective. He always kind of seemed to think about that. Plus the media side was really good on his background. So, but I digress. But that's what I'm hoping for, man. I'm hoping for good things, good tidings, and good cheer.
Okay, and now we are at the part of the show where Rocco Constantino, our ombudsman, is going to tell us what we screwed up, myself in particular, I'm sure. Rocco, take it away.
Just a few things for you, just to add on here. Padres, Maury mentioned at the beginning how bad they fell off in the second half. They were 15 games over 500 on August 1st and ended the season 4 games under 500. So a huge fall off there. Cy Williams from the Philadelphia Phillies. The shift has been traced as far back to Cy Williams in the early 1920s. At the Baker Bowl, he used to try and crank balls out of the short right field porch. And that's the earliest note of players trying to shift on a batter. Who knows if they had happened before that. And Victor brought up a great point of former major leaguers getting head coaching jobs in college. Just this year, Lance Berkman, Willie Bloomquist, Chip Hale, Jose Cruz Jr., Frank Catalanato, and Kirk Sarloos have been named Division I head coaches. And they join a whole host of other people like Chris Sabo, Eric Wedge, Tracy Woodson, Scott Bradley. Ton of knowledge out there. It's awesome. I put myself in that position of college-age students who are able to learn the game of baseball from former major leaguers who were really successful like that. So pretty cool.
Where's Frank the Cat at?
Hofstra.
Oh, he's at Hofstra. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, listen, gentlemen, I want to say thank you guys for coming on. It's been a pleasure to talk some baseball with you guys. Let's leave 2021 in the rearview mirror, and let's hope 22 is a good one. Rocco, thank you. Maury, want to say thank you for coming on. Victor, always a pleasure. Now go back and enjoy the Florida weather. So happy New Year, guys, and thanks for coming. We'll catch you next time on the BallNine Roundhouse next year.
Deuces.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.